It is Mock Draft Monday, week 7 of the NFL season. It is on Monday, October 23rd, as I record this, and the muddy waters are not getting any clearer anytime soon. As I tweeted out, mock drafting right now is an extremely convoluted process because, yeah, we have prospects that it's like these guys are going to be top 5 guys. Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Drake May. I'd pretty much bet anything that those 3 guys will be top 5 picks. After that, okay, we might have, Olu Fashanu is going to be a top 10 pick, probably almost for sure. We think that Jared Verse could go in the top 10. Dallas Turner, I think, is going to be a top 10 guy. But again, it gets really, really difficult to figure out, okay, where do these guys actually start to go off the board, especially when you have a team like the Bears with currently 2 top 3 picks, and that's quarterback range. Will they take a quarterback, or has Justin Fields shown you enough to this point? Obviously, he's been a bit dinged up of late. Tyson Bagent is starting for the Bears right now, and it's a weird spot because Fields has had a couple of really good games this season. Yes, coming against not so great defenses like the Broncos, but still a young quarterback, still developing. Would you go out and draft a QB? Really, really tough question to ask and answer, obviously. Easier to ask than it is to answer. But at number 1, I don't know how I could sit here and let the Bears take a QB right now. Obviously, it very easily could happen, but I don't know that that's a for sure thing. And especially if you like Justin Fields, you can trade down, accumulate a ton of draft picks, as we've seen, teams do in recent history, like the Bears last year when they got, out of the number 1 pick to get Bryce Young to Carolina, and accumulated this pick from Carolina, currently projected to be at number 1, and a couple of picks down the line, obviously, as well. DJ Moore included in that trade, of course, as well. So why not do that again? And we are going to have them trade back, and the team trading up is historically not a team we would probably talk about as a trade-up team. But the Patriots, I don't think, are all that enthused with Mac Jones. Bill Belichick just signed a big contract to remain a New England Patriot, and I know this seems so bizarre. I have the Patriots trading up. Well, you have to marry team need with value, and the Patriots and Bill Belichick might be like, all right, we got to get something to kickstart this turnaround, because the Patriots are as bad as they have been under Bill Belichick. Mac Jones, yeah, the offensive structure is not good, but Mac Jones isn't the guy that can kind of improvise out of a bad situation the way that maybe a guy like Caleb Williams can. So the Patriots could be potentially trading multiple first-round picks. We can only trade 2024 and 2025 in this, but it's less so about the actual trade details. It would probably be in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 first-round picks with trade swaps. That's just the price to go up to number 1. But if you could potentially get a franchise-altering quarterback in Caleb Williams, I think you'd go up and do that. And that's not to say that Drake May is not also in the conversation to be the first quarterback off the board. He absolutely is. Caleb Williams, if you're not a big college football fan, this is how I would think about it. Caleb Williams is one of the most elite improvising quarterback prospects we've ever seen, for sure. Is he as good in structure? No. Drake May, excellent within the structure of the offense, is extremely accurate, is poised, can go through his progressions, does not panic and create pressure for himself, but yet can still improvise and make plays with his legs. He's a really mobile guy, despite being a fairly polished or an incredibly polished passing pocket quarterback prospect. He would have been the number 1 overall pick last year, I can guarantee you. But Caleb Williams goes at number 1. It's very thin between them. I would prefer Caleb Williams right now. He's got elite arm talent. Drake May's in the conversation. I'm just not sure it's exactly in that same tier. It's very, very close. And May is extremely accurate with a big arm as well. It's very, very close. But Williams, I hate to just go to, like classic speak here, but he's got that it factor. That's just it. I know he struggled in recent weeks, and the USC offense has struggled more than we've seen them lately, but I still think Caleb Williams will be the number 1 overall pick. If it were Drake May, would not surprise me, though. At number 2, we have the Arizona Cardinals. Report came out from Jay Glazer that the Cardinals really like Kyler Murray, and they're not looking to trade him, and his contract further solidifies that. It's a lot of money to get out of. It's a lot of dead money if you were to trade him. And is it worth it when you already have a really solid quarterback that's still super young and still potentially developing as a player? And now it's easy to, see Madden and you get a guy at 80 overall and you build him up to 95. It's just constant progress. But that's not the way it works in the NFL, obviously. Progression is not linear. There are going to be peaks and valleys and maybe a gradual rise. But there's also guys that maybe skyrocket up and then flatline. So who knows what Kyler Murray is, but based on the reports, it sounds like Kyler Murray will be the quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals moving forward. And maybe Hollywood Brown's there, maybe isn't. I don't care if he is or he's not. Marvin Harrison Jr. is on the board. I know there's been some speculation recently that this guy's maybe not as elite of a receiver prospect as we're propping him up to be, but I just disagree with that. I don't think he has to be a super elite freak athlete to still be the best receiver prospect we've seen in close to a decade, right? Or he's not the same athletic super freak as Calvin Johnson is, because nobody is that is still an elite technician. But Harrison Jr. is an elite technician as a prospect. He's a great route runner, has size, doesn't drop the football. Love him as a player. I would not overthink this. When you actually watch him, I don't care what the 40 time is going to be, and I don't think it's going to be too bad, right? You care about how often is he able to create separation and catch the football, and it's very, very often in the case of MHJ. Bears on the clock at number 3. And this is another interesting spot for Chicago because I think a quarterback is going to go off the board at this spot. But would the Bears want to trade down another time? It's tough to say. And when you have the Bears, you have a team that, in my opinion, really needs to address center. There's no center worth taking at number 3 overall, nor is there one worth taking at number 6. You're just not ever going to see a center go that high in the draft. A rare guard, maybe, but you usually would almost never see a center go even close to the top 10. So what do the Bears do? You don't really necessarily need to take a tackle when you have Braxton Jones when healthy, and you, of course, drafted a tackle in the first round last year in Darnell Wright. What do? Their defensive line is atrocious, but I think this is going to be Drake May. I think Drake May is going to be either the first, second, or third pick. I don't think he falls much further than that. He's just such an incredibly polished quarterback prospect, and quarterback, I mean, that's the language of the NFL. That's what makes this league tick. There are so few elite QBs, and if you think you can get one, you're going to draft one very high. And Drake May is certainly in that upper echelon of quarterback prospects without question for me. But who trades up? I think the Vikings are going to trade up for a quarterback, but you can't do that with the Chicago Bears in your own division, more than likely. I know the Vikings have done that before. Kwesi traded with the GM of the Vikings, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, traded with the Lions in the Lewis Cine deal when the Lions went all the way up for Jamison Williams. But are you going to do that for a quarterback? Are you going to give your division rival a franchise quarterback? I don't think so. So you got a lot of tough questions that we're going to hopefully find answers to in the not-so-distant future. But the Cardinals would be a trade-down spot. But if you like Marvin Harrison Jr. so much that you don't want to let him slip away to a team like the Bears picking right behind you, again, it's really, really messy, as I've tried to illustrate. It's really messy right now. But with the Bears, I am going to stick and pick here. It's a tough spot to trade out of this pick. And I think when you have a prospect like Dallas Turner that is a freak athlete, as a lot of these edge rushers are nowadays, and especially within this draft class, Chop Robinson is a twitched up athletic freak edge rusher, as is, not maybe to that same level, but Jared Verse is a really good athlete as well. I love Leatu Latu. I do not know how PFF has him going consistently inside the top 10 or this high. I love him as a player. He's a 23-year-old edge rusher, will be in December, that was medically retired. I know the same thing would happen with Jalen Phillips when he went from UCLA to Miami, Latu from Washington to UCLA. But I don't think an older prospect with serious medical history is going to go in the top 5. I just do not buy it. I love him as a player. I really, really do. Might be my favorite edge rush prospect in the draft. Strong, powerful hands, excellent placement. He is a technician on the edge. I do not think he's going to be a top 5 guy because of the injury and the age. It's a huge thing in the draft. We see them draft on traits, not on the player that is currently there. That's why Michael Penix, I don't think is going to end up being a top 10 pick. I don't think he's going to be a top 20 pick. I don't know if he's going to be a first round pick, right? He's lighting it up in the pack this year. Absolutely. He is an older prospect with injury history, playing in an extremely quarterback-friendly offense where they air it out with time. How does he react under pressure? Maybe not so great. So there are questions. You're not necessarily going to take that guy in the first round. And then you have to get over the hump of maybe this offense doesn't want to reverse everything and work with a lefty quarterback. These are all knocks against Michael Penix. I know Tua was a top 5 guy. Penix could be for sure, but the injury history and the age, I think, is really working against him. But yeah, pick 4, Broncos, Drake May. I don't know if you believe in Russell Wilson. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But his contract is extremely difficult to move. Would anybody even want it? I'm not sure, but I think the player is too good. And your future franchise quarterback, I'm not even sure you're worried about Russ at this point. He hasn't been awful this year. I wanted that to be known. Has not been awful. Still not worth what you're paying him. Drake May could be better long-term. If he falls in your lap at 4, I think that's the direction I would go. But as I continue to say, extremely messy so far. And that does not stop with the Giants. What do you even do if you're the Giants, man? Tackle, Evan Neal has not looked great, especially in pass protection. Better as a run defender, or run blocker, excuse me. Why do I say run defender? Better as a run blocker, but not like so significantly. We need to continue to see him take strides, but that being said, he's a second-year guy. Not necessarily cause for super concern that he's not all that great already. Now, next year, if he's still bad, that's when we might start to sound the alarms, but I'm not sure you're taking Olu Fashanu here because you don't necessarily need a tackle. Andrew Thomas, obviously, on that other side, obviously not going to take a tight end. So I think you start to think about edge rush. Azeez Ojulari, I love him as a player, cannot stay healthy. It's a big problem. Really, really big problem. There's no guard or center worth taking here. The top guard in the class, probably, in my opinion, is going to be Zach Zinter. I think he could be a first-round pick for sure. Don't think he's going to go here. Cooper Beebe is a good player as well. Van Pran is a center. Giants definitely would not do that after taking John Michael Schmitz last year. So, again, what do you do? Receiver in that conversation for sure. And there are probably 2 wide receivers in the conversation that could be other top 10 guys. Malik Neighbors from LSU, Keon Coleman from Florida State. Both very good athletes. Neighbors is more of a separator. Keon Coleman's more of a jump ball guy. And he's an elite jump ball receiver. It's going to be interesting to see where these receivers end up going. You know, we saw Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle go very high a few years ago, and then seen some classes before and after them where receivers, weren't really going quite so high in the draft. And for the Giants, it'd be so easy to give them a receiver and just be done with it, but there's so many other team needs that should absolutely be in play. But at the same time, I do think that a game-changing receiver could make a really, really big difference to this offense that has struggled mightily to move the ball. And I do think as far as what the Giants need, which is someone that can separate, get open, get down the field, Malik Neighbors to me is a little bit better of a fit. And I love Keon Coleman as a player, but he's a jump ball guy right now, and he's a great athlete. Need to see him be a little bit more refined as a route runner. And for that reason, I don't know that he's going to be a top 5 guy, although I do think he will be a first rounder, and I think probably a top 15 or 20 pick. Just not sure about top 5. And I'm not even sure Malik Neighbors is going to be a top 5 guy either. It's going to be really interesting to study the 2023 film and see, okay, here's a guy I thought was going to be a little bit better. Turns out to be not quite as good as I thought. Or a guy that I thought, oh, this guy's maybe a one-trick pony, not so amazing. Turns out to be, wow, this guy's really just not getting the football as much. So he's not putting up these elite numbers that we kind of associate with, top-tier draft picks. Again, teams draft on traits, not on stats. Nobody cares about stats, I promise you. Bears at number 6 after Neighbors goes to the Giants. Took Dallas Turner at number 3. I don't think they're necessarily done with defensive line at this point. I really do think they're a team that could double dip, whether it's Johnny Newton on the inside or even taking another edge rusher. As crazy as that would seem, you need help pretty much everywhere if you were the Chicago Bears. Receiver could be one of those positions as well. And we talked about Keon Coleman. I do think there's a bit of a drop-off after Coleman to Rome Odunze, who I also love as a player, and then Adonai Mitchell, Emeka Egbuka, Xavier Worthy. I think all of these guys could really be in the conversation as first-round picks. It's a really, really fun receiver class. It is really, really fun. You have the jump ball guys like Keon Coleman, Adonai Mitchell, even Rome Odunze to a stretch, even though he's like a height, weight, speed freak. He really gets down the field in a hurry. Xavier Legette, Johnny Wilson especially, Juice Wells, J. Michael Sturdivant, Brian Thomas, Troy Franklin has a ton of speed down the field. And then you have kind of like the more refined, smaller route runners like Emeka Egbuka, Xavier Worthy, Jalen Polk even to a degree as well. It's a really fun receiver class. The top couple of rounds I think are going to be loaded at the position. It's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun. But for the Bears, you have DJ Moore. Why don't you go out and get a big jump ball receiver on the other side? Keon Coleman. It may have sounded like I talked him down a little bit, just maybe in comparison to Malik Neighbors right now for a team like the Giants. But for a team like the Bears that already has DJ Moore, I think Keon Coleman is a perfect fit and could be Justin Fields' best friend. Throw the ball up, Keon Coleman will come down with it. Packers at number 7. Olu Fashanu kind of just fell into your lap. I know he struggled a bit with JT Tuimoloau. Really good player, should be a first-round guy. He was so good last year as well, though. He would have been a top 5 pick last year. Maybe falls a bit just because of the other players, where the team's picking in these spots at the moment. But for the Packers, David Bakhtiari, as we talk about, always not going to be there forever. Tackle is a need, and he's got a big injury history as well. Olu is a really, really good tackle prospect. I would not worry about one game in regards to, evaluating a prospect. Obviously, those games against the more talented prospects, you have to weigh a little bit more, but I would not weigh one game when he was as dominant as he was last year. I think back to a situation where I, still getting into scouting, watching film, learning from people a lot smarter than I am. Well, I was watching Clemson football. Clemson versus LSU. Guess who absolutely torched A.J. Terrell that game? Jamar Chase. Elite receiver prospect. And I go, okay, maybe A.J. Terrell is not quite what I thought he could be, because he was a really good corner prospect. Jamar Chase cooked him. A.J. Terrell comes out, excellent player, pretty much right away in the NFL. So sometimes you have to say, okay, this guy's an elite prospect. He had his number today. How can they go out and make those changes to be better in the future? I think Olu can be one of those guys that continues to develop. Would not let one game against a very good edge rush prospect in JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State cloud your judgment from what was on film the entirety of 2022 and some of 2023 already. Vikings at 8. Is this a quarterback spot? Kirk Cousins, I don't think is going to be there next year. But which quarterback is it? J.J. McCarthy, everyone seems to hate. I still think he's going to be a first-round pick. He is very young with a lot of arm talent and is someone that can already read defenses very well, go through progressions, patience, poise, and throwing with anticipation at times as well. I think McCarthy is a little bit undervalued because he plays at Michigan. He's had a couple of rough games. Again, I wouldn't wait one game against a quarterback's entire resume. I think there's a chance he's the third quarterback off the board in a strong QB class. I don't think that it's Bo Nix or Michael Penix, certainly not Riley Leonard. I think the top 3 quarterbacks following Caleb Williams and Drake May at this point are probably a combination of J.J. McCarthy, Shadur Sanders, and Quinn Ewers. And Quinn, as a Texas fan, I don't know if I necessarily believe in him being this elite quarterback prospect playing up to his arm talent, which can be otherworldly. He's just not as consistent, and in the Texas offense has proved to be really a game manager a lot. And that's great for winning, right? And he's injured right now, and that's also a concern with him in the draft. But I just have question marks. Is he as elite as the other quarterback prospects? And I don't think so right now. We'll see what happens. A lot of season left. Who knows how much we're going to see of it for Quinn. Got to continue to see these guys develop. You got to remember, when you're dealing with 20 and 21-year-olds as football players, there's a lot of development to be done. You see guys get drafted at 21, 22, 23, 24, and they're not ready to go right away. It takes a long time to develop these guys. They're still growing. And when you talk about drafting on traits and developing those traits, and developing, their other elements and aspects of their game, it's not what they are now, it's what they could be. And yeah, that's pretty much what I want to say. I'm gonna go JJ McCarthy here. I'm sure the Michigan and Minnesota crowds will get along well on this. And I know people don't like JJ McCarthy. I think he could very well end up being the third quarterback off the board. He could fall out of the first couple of rounds entirely. Who knows how the NFL will end up viewing these guys. But just when you're talking about traits, McCarthy is near the top of the list here in a very talented quarterback class. So that's where I am on that. Am I in love with JJ McCarthy as a prospect? Wouldn't say that. I just think he's going to end up going fairly high in the draft. We'll see if that changes. It very well could. Chargers at 9. I mean, you're constantly looking to build and build that offense. And Brock Bowers, man. I mean, if you want weapons for Justin Herbert, which continues to be the theme for that Chargers team, is it going to be Quentin Johnston? A lot of development to be done there. Who knows what ends up happening? Brock Bowers is as elite of a tight end prospect as you will ever find. Kyle Pitts in that same vein as his super freak receiver. Well, Brock Bowers is a phenomenal receiver who's also a phenomenal blocker. I do think he ends up being close to a top 10 pick, if not a top 10 pick, and he is a super elite freak tight end prospect. He's so good. Don't overthink this one. Gerald Everett, whatever. Donald Parham, whatever. Brock Bowers at 9 to the Chargers. I think it's a really fun fit. And then you have the Titans at 10. They need receiver. They need offensive line help. This is one of those teams that, do you want Andre Dillard to be, a pillar you can lean on? Andre Pillard, call him. Not really. Nicholas Petit-Frere. They got some questions on the offensive line, and this is a pretty good tackle class. J.C. Latham at right guard, I think, or right tackle, is a very, very good prospect. One of the strongest offensive tackles I've ever seen. Watched him last year. I think he could have been a top 10 pick last year. Joe Alt. Everyone loves Joe Alt. Really, really solid across the board. Would make sense in the top 15, for sure. Amarius Mims. Super big, super freak athlete as well. Dealing with some injuries right now. I still think he could be a top 10 guy. You're talking about traits. Amarius Mims is at the top of the board in terms of traits. Fuaga from Oregon State. I wanted this to be Fuunga because the AG in Samoan languages is an ung sound, like Tua Tagovailoa, but apparently it's Fuaga as listed on the Oregon State website. He is a mauler in the run game. I don't know if he ends up being a first-round pick, but it's a good tackle class. Patrick Paul, certainly in that conversation as well. Tyler Guyton, Kingsley Suamataia. These are guys that could definitely be in that first-round conversation. It's a good tackle class. Not so sure if Graham Barton gets in there, or again, Fuaga, but Jordan Morgan. A lot of these other guys, I think, are in that conversation for day 2. We'll see if they end up being first-round picks. I know PFF has a very interesting big board, usually, we'll say. Titans at 10, though. I just think, you lost out so big when you traded away A.J. Brown with the thought that Treylon Burks could just be A.J. Brown. And he was a prospect that could do similar things, but he's not 2.0. He's the light version, unfortunately, for Tennessee. Injuries have been a problem. I think you need to go out and get a big-time receiver. I love Rome Odunze. He's had a big year for Washington. Does he end up being a top 10 guy? Not sure about that, but the team need and the talent of Rome Odunze happen to match up in this spot. He's a really, really good athlete. Deep speed for days, and is just continuing to produce for Washington. I think he could probably end up being a top 10 guy for sure. Saints at 11. Could this be a quarterback? Do you believe in Derek Carr? Do you want to go a different direction? I think receiver could be in play as well. I'm going to go Shadur Sanders here from Colorado. He's had some big games for Colorado. He's also struggled. It's not a great team around him. Got to remember, Deion comes into this Colorado program, and everyone that they got is from the transfer portal. This is a team that won, one game a year ago? It's amazing they've even won 3 or 4 already. And yes, they're in slugfests with Colorado State, right? I get that. But Shadur Sanders, in not such a great situation, continues to produce and continues to put a lot of great stuff on tape. Doesn't have the craziest arm or improvisational ability, but is a really solid quarterback who is fairly accurate and throws a really catchable football. It's not bullets every time, but it gets there and it gets there on time. He's another guy that You see him throw with anticipation at times. You go, okay, that's an NFL type throw, fitting it into a window that a lot of quarterbacks wouldn't even try because they don't know it's there. Raiders at 12, give them a quarterback a lot in these spots. I don't think Jimmy G is the guy. You can get out of that contract fairly soon. I guess I'll go Quinn Ewers based on who's available. I know the Bo Nix and Michael Penix hype. Again, I think teams draft on traits. I think Quinn and Shadur Sanders have better traits than Michael Penix and Bo Nix, who is like 40 years old already. He has played and started in more college football games than any other quarterback in FBS college football history. It's crazy. But Bo Nix at Oregon is way better than the Bo Nix at Auburn. Way better prospect. Could definitely be the first senior quarterback we see get taken, but who knows? Maybe Shadur goes back to Colorado. Maybe Quinn goes back to Texas, although I find that unlikely. Maybe J.J. McCarthy goes back to Michigan, right? So many different things are going to happen between now and April. As I've mentioned already previous times in this video, the 2024 NFL draft is a mess right now from a mock draft perspective. Colts at 13 certainly don't need a running back with Jonathan Taylor getting a big deal to remain in Indianapolis. So what do you need? I don't know. It's a bit of a tough call for me right now. I certainly wouldn't say that they need to upgrade much of their offensive line, as that's a need, apparently. I think you really like what you have on the bookends at tackle. I think you love Quentin Nelson. I think Ryan Kelly is still a decent player. I mean, Braden Smith, he's really solid as well, alongside a very good young player, the German from Central Michigan. Anyone remember? Really, really good player. Apparently has graded out extremely well, Bernard Ryman. So he's someone that I don't think the Colts would look to upgrade on. Really great athlete, was a tight end at Central Michigan, and is still learning to play tackle and apparently learning pretty quickly. But what do you take? I don't know that they need a receiver. I don't think their receiver core is great or terrible. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I might take like the best defensive player, honestly. I think corner, it feels weird that none of them have gone off the board. I think it's a good corner class. Like Kool-Aid McKinstry's great. Cooper DeJean might be the best DB in the entire class. Kalen King's very good. I really, really, really think Nate Wiggins is an incredible talent at Clemson. I think he could end up being the first corner off the board. It's going to be interesting to see. And the Colts, I think, could certainly take a corner. I mean, Stephon Gilmore was a nice starter for them and then left to go join the Cowboys, right? And that could be something you look to address, bring in a corner. And even though it's not listed as a team need really for them, I think it would be a really nice upgrade to their defense. And there are a number of good ones available. I think I probably will go with Kool-Aid McKinstry. He is a long corner. We talk about the arm length, so important for corners. Height, good. Speed, fairly good. But he is another one of these technicians at defensive back. And he's someone that is really good at staying in phase, getting his hands on you early, and running with you down the field. Washington Commanders at number 14. Probably don't need a quarterback here, but I think it could be in play depending on how you feel about Sam Howell. But their offensive line is a mess. The best one available might be Joe Alt to go ahead and clean that up a little bit. So, potential starter. I know they've been moving guys all around. Sam Cosme, you thought maybe he's a tackle, maybe he's a guard. Joe Alt can be a tackle. He's about 6'7", 315 pounds. He's going to play tackle for a team and probably be a really, really solid one for many years in the NFL, even though that sounds crazy to say. You know, these NFL contracts and career spans are so short. Joe Alt could be one that certainly lasts a long time. Rams at 15. Man, they've been happy with Puka Nacua. Not going to say I called that, but I am going to say that. I called that. If you watch my Rams rebuild this year, he was like a 65 overall in the game. I'm like, this is a guy to watch. And I keep seeing in the comments, a lot of you, just based on my advice, picked him up for your fantasy teams, and he's crushing it for you. So, congratulations, if there's money on the line especially. But Rams at 15, what do you do here? Another team that really doesn't have a ton of talent, but they're winning regardless. Matthew Stafford being healthy, really helping them out. I think this is just a case of taking the best player available. And, I think that probably based on positional value as well, falls on the edge. I'm going to go Jared Verse. I think he could be a top 10 player easily, top 5. It just didn't work out for any of these teams picking for me at this point. Saints obviously could. Raiders in that same conversation as well. Colts. I mean, a lot of these teams could, but he's someone that falls, and we see players fall all the time in the draft. And I think he's an incredible player. I think you'd be really happy to get him at 8, let alone 15, if you're a team like the Rams. Cardinals back on the board, courtesy of the Houston Texans at number 16. Again, going to avoid quarterback, took wide receiver earlier. I think this might be another case of taking the best player available for a team that just does not have a lot of talent. And Chop Robinson makes a ton of sense to me here. You need edge help. Myjai Sanders effectively got cut. I think, did they end up trading him for something? I think it might have been a late round swap. But I think he was going to hit waivers if something didn't get done. Let's go Chop Robinson. Super athletic freak edge rusher. Got injured in the Ohio State game, but really, really good player. And it's another one of these Penn State like linebackers that's just a freak. He is an edge rusher as opposed to an off-ball guy like Abdul Carter currently at Penn State. Micah Parsons, right? But ended up playing on the edge. But Chop Robinson, really, really good athlete. Penn State, they just produce these incredible athletes into the draft. Chop Robinson, certainly no different. Cardinals need pass rush desperately. Jets at 17. Mocking for the Jets is tough. Tackle could be a need, right, because of Mekhi Becton's injury history and the revolving door of guys that they played on the other side, like George Fant has played quite a bit, Dwayne Brown at times. Not this year, right, but in the past. They also might be losing guys like Bryce Huff and John Franklin Myers in the near future. That's why they ended up going out and drafting an edge rusher, Will McDonald, in the top 20 last year, which was kind of a shock at the time. And he's not really even playing for them. So I don't know what the Jets are doing in the draft. It's honestly a little bit difficult to predict. But based on the offensive tackles available, this is a tackle for me all day. Do you prefer the right tackle in J.C. Latham or the left tackle in Amarius Mims? And you could potentially flip these guys as well if you wanted to. But there's development that has to be done. I'm going to go Amarius Mims. Again, dealing with some injuries right now, but I think easily could be the second or third tackle off the board, if not the first, depending on how teams feel about him, obviously. Bengals at 18. What do you do if you're Cincinnati? Well, DB constantly seems to be a need for them, but they've got some good play out of their younger guys. I mean, Cam Taylor-Britt makes plays. You guys know I love Dax Hill. I'm a big DJ Turner guy. I think they've kind of solidified that need a little bit to the point where you don't necessarily have to take that so high in the draft. And I see Johnny Newton available, Jerzon Johnny Newton out of Illinois. He is an interior defensive lineman that's a little bit undersized, but is really good at the interior penetration. Part of the game. He's always living in the backfield. And does that remind you of anyone else that you saw play defensive line for the Bengals? I'm not saying Geno Atkins, but yeah, similar traits in there. Could be, best case scenario, a similar impact to Geno Atkins. Obviously, impossibly tough to predict he's going to be that good. But as far as pass rushing interior defensive linemen go, Johnny Newton is the best you're going to find in this class, in my opinion. Bucks at 19. Not a quarterback for me here. Probably not a tight end. Linebacker is a bit of a need with Levante David continuing to age. Devin White requesting a trade that the Bucks are not going to honor. And linebacker, I mean, it is a question, but there's so many other questions for them as well. And this was a team that going into the year, I'm like, okay, they don't really have a ton of talent. And they still have the guys the receivers, Godwin and Evans, Vita Vea, Levante David, Devin White. Their corners, when healthy, are quite good. But there are some holes on that team for sure. And Shaq Barrett, aging. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, what are you really going to get from him? A lot of question marks. I think that you could even take a tackle. Could probably go out and try to get a guard. I think it's a little bit early for a guy like Zach Center right now. Again, could be a first-round pick. Tough to say for sure. But for me, I think this could just be a case of going with the best player available, and you can never have too many edge rushers. I know that there are other, maybe more pressing needs, but I think when you look at the long-term future of Shaq Barrett, and is Joe Tryon-Shoyinka going to be a guy that sticks around and develops into a game-breaking edge rusher? I don't know. So I am going to go off the edge here, and I am going to go JT Tuimoloau. I know I'm leaving Leatu Latu on the board. I love him as a prospect. I just think he's going to fall with the injury history and the age. And I love Cooper DeJean as well. I love Nate Wiggins. How am I not getting these guys off the board? I haven't found a spot for a corner really yet, other than just giving one to the Colts, who could definitely need a corner. And I think I will give one to the Falcons as well. Could be a quarterback. A lot of them are off the board. I don't know that you necessarily take one at this spot, but there's so many good corners available. Again, I love Nate Wiggins. Kalen King is really, really good, can play on the slot, can play on the boundary, runs real well, stays in phase at an elite level as well. Cooper DeJean, again, might be the best overall DB in the class. He's made an impact as a return man for Iowa. He is so good. Fluid movements, runs real well. And I know the stigma with white corners. He's a guy that I think can stick a corner, but might be better in the nickel or at safety just because he can impact the play more rather than just taking one guy out of the game. He can be all over the field, and I think that's Cooper DeJean in a nutshell. And with the Falcons taking Clark Phillips last year, probably wanting him to play in the nickel, I'm not sure you go DeJean unless you want to move him back to safety. But you sign Jesse Bates, you have Richie Grant. I'm not sure you want to do that. We're going to go with the boundary corner. I'm going to go Nate Wiggins. I really, really like him. Now you have a Clemson duo on the outside, A.J. Terrell and Nate Wiggins. I love the fit. Bills at 21. It's receiver for me. And Emeka Egbuka, I think, would be an awesome option. You have Stephon Diggs. You have Gabriel Davis. These are big-time players. Emeka Egbuka in the slot can be a big-time playmaker as a third option for Josh Allen. Yes, maybe you want Dalton Kincaid to play the H-back / big slot role, but getting another receiver, I think, is actually going to be a big help to this team. I can see offensive line for sure as well. Cowboys at 22. You know, they've kind of addressed that defensive interior. I don't really think they need a corner. When healthy, they're pretty strong there. Deron Bland, Stephon Gilmore, depending on how long he stays in Dallas, and Trayvon Diggs. Don't really think they need a corner. Linebacker, they certainly could look that direction, but with, LVE, with, Micah Parsons, if you want to call him a linebacker, even though he's certainly more of an edge at this point in his career. They've had a number of players play quite well for them. Damone Clark, DeMarvion Overshown's going to be coming back from injury next year. And they've had great play from Marquise Bell, the Florida A&M safety linebacker hybrid. So do they take a linebacker? I don't really know that they have to unless it's a big thumping type. And you do have that in Barrett Carter. Like Danny Stutzman's a good player. Smile Munden is quite good as well. It's going to be really interesting to see where the linebackers end up going. They're not really like first-round guys that we're seeing lately. I don't know what you do if you were the Dallas Cowboys. I think it could be an edge rusher to look to replace DeMarcus Lawrence long-term. I still like what they have on the edge. It could also be an interior defensive lineman. Like, you have some good talent there in Mozzie Smith, Osa Odigizua. Maybe this is a receiver. I don't know that you've gotten what you've wanted out of Michael Gallup. Brandon Cooks is not really that much of a factor in the offense. Could be a receiver here. And based on the combo with CeeDee Lamb, as much as it pains me to do this as a Texas fan and a big Giants fan, of course, grew up a Texas Longhorn fan with all my family going to Texas and UT, so it's an unfortunate combination when the Cowboys are a big rival of the Giants and they both are in Texas. But listen, Xavier Worthy, I hate to do it to the Cowboys. I think he's just a great fit for that offense. Someone can get down the field, someone that can win in the slot as well, potentially. It's a frustrating fit that it just seems to be quite good. Steelers at 23. I think this could be an interior defensive lineman. I really do. Obviously some aging talent in there. Cam Hayward. You drafted Keanu Benton, though, but you could use somebody else on the interior. And there are a number of really good defensive line prospects like Chris Jenkins, Mason Smith, Leonard Taylor, certainly. McKinley Jackson could end up being a first-round guy, as could Tavondre Sweat if you're looking for a big nose tackle. Would he go at 23, though? It's tough to say if he's going to go quite that high. Nas Stackhouse, really, really good player. It's a good interior defensive line class, without question. Do the Steelers choose to go that way? They go somewhere else. Corner could certainly be in play as well, even with drafting Joey Porter Jr. last year. The Steelers are always one of those tough teams to draft for because just don't know which direction that they're going to go in. They seem to be more unpredictable than most because they take some of these less valuable positions. Linebacker is one of those that I've thought about giving to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But, yeah, again, I'm not really sure which way you'd go here. Edge could even be in play just to get another rotational guy in there. But I don't know that you do that at 23 when you're looking to potentially fill some other needs. It'd be fun to combine Kalen King back with Joey Porter Jr. Really, really would be. Or you could potentially take a tackle, maybe even look to play him at guard. That's certainly in play as well. Or maybe you just want a long-term tackle upgrade. I think I'm going to give some flexibility here. I'm going to go J.C. Latham from Bama. Plays right tackle for them. He was going to play left tackle before they got a huge commit out of Iowa to start at left tackle as a true freshman for them. But J.C. Latham, he's a big upgrade long-term on the offensive line. We know how important it is to have big-time offensive linemen. He is so strong and so big, it is just tough for edge rushers to get around him or get through him. And then the Texans at 24. Now, receiver could be fun here. There's not a lot there right now, and CJ Stroud's just getting the job done because he's so good. I love Adonai Mitchell. He's a big jump ball guy right now. You might already have a similar type of receiver in Nico Collins, although Adonai Mitchell, I think, is a lot more explosive than Nico Collins is. But Cooper DeJean is who I'm going to end up going with because of his flexibility to play boundary, to play slot, nickel, overhang, maybe even free or strong safety. I just think you have a playmaker on the back end, and it could not be understated how good Cooper DeJean is and how he will probably go earlier in the draft. Seahawks at 25. I am going with edge help here. We are ending the fall of Leatu Latu. I think he's too talented. I know I've talked about the injury history and the age. Age less of a problem to me than the injury stuff is, but he's so talented. I think he still could be a first-round pick, and talent-wise, probably a top 10 or 15 player in the class for me very comfortably. I watched him last year. I'm really excited to dive into the tape in 2023, sometime this late fall or winter, but Latu is so good. He's got to end up being a first-round pick for me. He's just so talented. I just don't know how high he ends up going. Lions at 26, man, looking like they killed the draft last year despite all the haters with positional value. Drafting Jack Campbell, Brian Branch. I don't know how Brian Branch fell to, 45? Ridiculous. The NFL continues to undervalue slot nickel corner despite that being such an important position nowadays when they can defend the run and stay with the third receiver when so many offenses are coming out in 3 wide receiver sets. I don't know why it's being undervalued, and the Lions got to steal. That's just what it comes down to, in my opinion. Let's go with an interior defensive lineman, and I'm going to go with Chris Jenkins. He's on the Bruce Feldman's freak list. He's the son of former defensive lineman in the NFL, Chris Jenkins, and he is going to stick in Michigan. I think it's a fun storyline. Happened with Aiden Hutchinson. Going to happen here with Chris Jenkins. Jags at 27, Kalen King. I mean, you could use help at corner, especially in the nickel. Kalen King has shown you that he can play on the outside and in the slot. It just seems like a great fit for a team that needs that. Ravens at 28 really also needs corner, and Josh Newton is probably the last guy I could see going in the first round right now. And for a team that is so banged up at that position and has lost so many of their impact players at corner over the past few years, you need to replenish that, and Josh Newton could help you do that. I know he's listed at maybe 6 foot. I think he's about 5'10", 5'11", but I think has the chops to play on the outside. Again, another guy that's good at staying in phase, good man coverage. In phase is basically staying on the hip of a wide receiver, if you don't know what that means, by the way. Dolphins at 29. I don't know what you do here if you're the Dolphins. Needs tight end, but it's not really a big part of their offense. So a guy like Durham Smythe can get you by. Do you go offensive line? Could this be the place we see Zach Zinner go? Could take an offensive tackle as well. This is just one where I'm not really sure, to be honest, because their offense is so good. But does another offensive lineman help you get even better? Certainly could. Could you try and upgrade the defense? Keep a guy like Cam Kinchins in Miami. Let's do it. Let's go Cam Kinchins. Like, yes, I love Javon Holland. I love Brandon Jones. These are good players. Hookham, of course. But Kinchins is a really, really good player. And again, especially with how many receiver sets you see out there, you could run, more big nickel. They've run so many 3 safety sets with Brandon Jones getting on the field historically that like you could use another upgrade at the position. And I know this might be a pick people don't like at all, but I think the player is really good. So I'm taking a shot there on Cam Kinchins, who is just a really solid player. I'm getting a safety into the first round. And then we have the 49ers at 30. What do you do here for the Niners? I mean, your defense is so good, but so is your offense. You're one of the best teams in the league. You can kind of do whatever you want. When I look at them, I really wish they had better receivers. I love Brandon Ayuk. Deebo Samuel's like a fun gadget player that is a good receiver, but like a running back hybrid. But I don't know if they have that like bona fide guy outside of those two. And Deebo's not your traditional wide receiver. So I'm going to go Adonai Mitchell here. He's a big-bodied receiver on the outside. Just another toy for Kyle Shanahan to play with, essentially. And then the Chiefs at 31. Always looking to upgrade that offense. But I think helping out Steve Spagnuolo, getting another big-time edge rusher in there, wouldn't be the worst either. Braylon Trice certainly fits the bill. He's someone that's big enough where these Spags defenses definitely fits the bill there. Wide receiver, like you have Rashee Rice, Sky Moore, I don't know if he's ever going to be anything. You just brought back Mecole Hardman, who works for the offense. I don't know what you do if you're the Chiefs. I've given them tight ends before, just like your heir apparent to Travis Kelce. And receiver is still a need when you have guys like, oh, shoot. What is his name? Who's the White that gets in there? Shoot, Justin Watson. He's playing probably a little bit too much. I don't know what you do if you were the Chiefs. I'm going to go interior defensive line. I'm going to go Mason Smith. Really, really good when healthy. A really good athlete. A lot of these guys are. Leonard Taylor just wins with athleticism. A guy like McKinley Jackson could be somebody that ends up getting a lot of first-round hype. And then the Eagles at 32. I think this is offensive line for me. And we're going to go with a tackle to play right tackle. You replace Lane Johnson long-term. He's getting older. You can develop a guy. And, you got a lot of guys that fit. Tyler Guyton. Patrick Paul's really good on the left side. Again, Fuaga's a mauler in the run game. And, I guess if you want to talk about the identity of that Eagles team, I think Patrick Paul and Tyler Guyton end up going higher. I'll go Fuaga. We'll throw him in the first round. Mauler in the run game. You stick to that Philly identity. That's the mock draft. And hopefully you guys enjoyed it. It is a mess, absolutely. But it's an October 23rd mock draft. We have very few answers right now and a lot of questions. And that's like the big fun part of doing these. So that's the mock. Hope you enjoyed. And I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.